Om Sahanavavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We were reading in the chapter titled Strength, and we are now at the section Destructive Aspect of Truth. Our heart is to be made consciously a cremation ground, the cremation ground of all our attachments, our impurities, our ego. This endless burning is the worship of the Lord, the only true worship there is, and it should never unnerve us. Our trouble is that we worship only a God who gives us pleasure and sense satisfaction. But is not misery also His? Everywhere we worship the God who is the giver of boons. But as soon as we think of Him as the destroyer, we are afraid. Shiva as the giver of boons is alright. Shiva dancing the mad dance of destruction is horrible. Why? There is no rhyme or reason in our attitude. God is God only when there is creation, when there is preservation. But when there is destruction, God has no hand in it. No, that cannot be. God is God only when He is God in all aspects. When He is the God of creation, preservation and destruction, and above all, the God who is none of all of these. So, the present day reaction against the religion of a merely good God is to be appreciated. When you give the modern mind a kind and good God, it will throw him overboard. But when you give the modern mind the real God, it will in most cases accept him. God as creator, preserver and destroyer is Mother. Mother again in her absolute aspect beyond all these is Shiva. Thus the relative aspect of God as it were is Mother. The absolute aspect of God, that is the same Mother in her state beyond creation, preservation and destruction is Shiva. Mother is dancing her mad play of creation, preservation and destruction on Shiva, who is lying under her feet, motionless and unconcerned, appearing to be dead. What wonderful, infinitely deep symbols of truth all these are. Why be afraid of death? Death can be glorious. Where do we find the greatest play of Mother? Only in the cremation ground. And the cremation ground is as real and true as the nursery. In life and in death, the aspirant should cling to the Mother, and to the Mother alone, giving up attachment to fear for both life and death. It always happens that he who has a great fascination for pleasant things gets misery. Physical distress is nothing compared to the mental distress and suffering we all have to pass through in life. So, we should always know that truth is beyond happiness and misery and can only be attained by transcending them both. Ram Prasad sings, "O my fickle mind, never stop taking the name of the Mother at all times, come what may. You may pass through misery, you may have more. What does it matter?" No physical suffering can ever be compared to the terrible tempests raging in the human mind. And all these tempests can never be transcended as long as we cling to life in its pleasant aspect and deny or try to deny its terrible aspect. We must be fully prepared to transcend both the good and terrible aspects of God if we really wish to reach Him and acquire peace and blessedness. It is very important to be able to stand the destructive aspect of truth. It must first of all burn away all our false hopes, false identifications, pet ideas, all our false worldly aspirations, all our small, petty, greedy loves. Then only will truth reveal itself, not before. But who really wants them to be burnt? Who wants to pay the price and reach the goal? We have got the means, the methods taught by great saints, but we are so perverse that we always postpone our own efforts and go on deriving intellectual enjoyments from these ideas without realizing their truth themselves. That is why we remain far away from the goal. Very often we want to dream of our miserable, contemptible, petty little dreams of love and power and self-glorification. We want to hug them to our heart's content and cling to them as long as we possibly can till they are torn away from us. As I said, if you are really prepared to follow the spiritual life, you must do away with all dreams, gross and subtle, even if they are apparently good ones. There must be merciless scrubbing and cleansing and readjustment within us. A new outlook must be created, sacrificing old notions, pet ideas, prejudices, etc. Tremendous, uncompromising boldness is necessary. Those who are manly, who are bold, strong, purposeful, and reliable alone can attain to truth, not others. It is such a wonderful adventure. In Vedanta, there is no place for the weakling, for worms growling in the dust, for sinners who go on crying, "Oh, I'm a sinner, I'm a sinner. What can I do? I'm a sinner." And then merrily and carelessly continue to sin, wallow in the mire, and wail and cry. Truth is not to be attained by the weak. If purity is ours by birthright, why not manifest purity? If love is ours by birthright, why not manifest love? If bliss is ours by birthright, why not manifest bliss? If freedom is ours by birthright, why go on being slaves to our senses, our body, mind, and ego? Break the dream mercilessly. Learn to stand on your own feet, a man's feet, manfully. Swami Vivekananda says in one of his poems, "Be bold and face the truth. Be one with it. Let vision cease. Or, if you cannot, dream but truer dreams, which are eternal love and service free." This is from the complete works of Swami Vivekananda, published in 1973, volume 4, page 389. Next section. Think of the Atma. Think about the Atman standing behind your body and mind. That is our real nature. To the extent we dissociate ourselves from the false personality and identify ourselves with the spirit, we get fearlessness and strength, we get purity and peace. To the extent we identify ourselves with the divine in us, we become saintly. When a person is outgoing, he becomes a sinner. When he withdraws into his self, he becomes a saint. The secret of success in ethical and spiritual life is to look upon oneself as a spiritual being, pure by nature and self-luminous in its essence. During our meditation, we have to drive this idea into the very depth of our consciousness, and then the pure and self-luminous nature of the self will manifest even in the body and the mind. Let those who want to weep over their sins do it by all means. Let us, on the other hand, think of the divine, the ever pure, eternal self, the Atman within us, and assert its glory. Let us always try to remember, even when the mind is clouded and inclined towards evil, these wonderful words of Swami Vivekananda. Arise, awake, awake from this hypnotism of weakness. None is really weak. The soul is infinite, omnipotent, and omniscient. Stand up, assert yourself, proclaim the God within you. Teach yourself, teach everyone his real nature. Call upon the sleeping soul and see how it awakes. Power will come, glory will come, goodness will come, purity will come, and everything that is excellent will come when the sleeping soul is roused to self-conscious activity. This is from the complete works of Swami Vivekananda, page 19, volume 3, published in 1973, page 193. Okay, we have finished this chapter 14, which is strength. We are now beginning chapter 15, integration of personality and inner poise. Our first section, our center of gravity. As children, we greatly admired a small metal ink pot which the gypsies used to sell, having a heavy weight at the bottom so that it could never tip over and spill the ink. That was a marvel we could not understand until we learned later that the ink pot had its center of gravity always secure within it so it could not overturn and spill the ink. That was an instance of perfect equilibrium in relation to outside forces such as gravitation. With reference to the emotions, this is like maintaining inner serenity in the midst of the disturbing events of life. This is poise. How can a human being acquire serenity and poise? As young men, we looked for poise in vain among the elders of our families and also among our university professors. We discovered it at last in the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. The greatest among those at whose feet we had the privilege of sitting was Swami Brahmananda, who possessed serenity to such an extent that he could even impart it to others. Once two young monks in a monastery had quarreled and created a disturbance among the others. Swami Premananda, who was in charge, went to Swami Brahmananda, the head of the order. We brother disciples have lived together and in peace and harmony for many years. What shall we do with these boys? Ought we not to expel them? Swami Brahmananda replied quietly, Brother, it is true that they have been making trouble. But remember also that they came here to take refuge at the blessed feet of Sri Ramakrishna. They look to you for counsel and guidance. Surely we can do something for them that will transform their lives and bring love into their hearts. Swami Premananda replied, Brother, it is you who must bless them and transform them. Then Swami Premananda gathered all the monks, seniors and novices alike, and led them in a procession to the presence of the great Swami. Now Swami Brahmananda entered into an exalted mood, and as each monk came into his presence and bowed at his feet, he just touched his head in benediction. One who was thus blessed said, That touch was like a cooling spring to a fevered body. Peace reigned once again in the hearts of the monks and in the monastery. So this is from Swami Prabhavananda, The Eternal Companion, published in 1971, pages 76 and 77. Emotional stability is a wonderful thing to have, but in our age we see very little of it. But it must not be forgotten that the conflicts that appear in the outside world are only a manifestation of what is to be found within our own mind. These troubles may be reduced only if we can take greater care of our own mind and use it judiciously. It is a fact that just as our body is affected by poisons and disease germs, so also our mind suffers as a result of harmful emotions. We are in constant conflict with our environment, but a greater struggle goes on within ourselves. We are our own greatest problem. Next section, complexes, the cause of conflicts. According to the present day Western psychologists, our inner conflicts are due to some such cause as primitive, quote unquote, primitive egocentric drives coupled with, quote unquote, a forbidding conscience. Of such, it has been remarked that if their conscience were removed, it would be but a minor operation. Fortunately or fortunately, however, most of us are not like that. We are eternally in conflict with ourselves. Such instances as self-assertion, mating, acquisition and fright awaken in us the emotion of egotism, pride, lust, jealousy, anger, fear, etc. Nowadays we hear a great deal about complexes, instincts and emotions. What are they? How are they related? Some psychologists tell us that instincts and emotions conflicting with each other produce complexes. Others use the term in a more generalized sense and hold that a complex is a group of ideas closely bound together by a common emotional bond. According to some, our instincts and emotions can be grouped under three main complexes: the ego complex, the sex complex, and the herd complex. The ego complex includes the instincts of self-preservation, acquisition, pugnacity, curiosity, repulsion, and flight. The corresponding emotions are a sense of superiority, pride, possessiveness, anger, disgust, and fear. The sex complexes include sex and parental instincts. The corresponding emotions are love, lust, jealousy, coyness, and tenderness. The herd complex includes the gregarious instincts, suggestion, and appeal. The corresponding emotions are loneliness, sympathy, distress, attachment, helpfulness, and trust. All this is from Strecker and Apple, Discovering Ourselves, published in 1954, pages 87, 97, 108. Evidently, complexes include almost the whole gamut of our emotional life. Complexes are common to all human beings. They may be good or bad, depending on whether they are used for good or bad purposes, whether they ultimately lead to development and expansion of personality or destruction and cramping of personality. Instincts of self-assertion, for instance, may be given a higher term. They can be used to control one's passion, using the energy so saved for higher evolution and thus for the good of one's fellow men. Therefore, there is no need to raise a hue and cry about complexes as some misguided people do. What is bad about complexes is the nature of some of them and the way they are dealt with. Avoiding, forgetting, or repressing complexes do not help us much. Nor does unbridled expression of emotions help, whether they are good or bad. What is needed is balance, equipoise. In spiritual men like Swami Vivekananda, we find the spontaneity and freedom of a child combined with the control and purity of an ascetic. The result of this blending is a versatile, supple, creative personality, a source of power and peace. Psychologists are continually revealing to us how emotions play tricks on us and bring about physical and mental illnesses of different kinds. On the other hand, proper direction and control of our emotions contribute to health and stability. Dr. Flanders Dunbar, in her book Mind and Body, tells of a psychiatrist who had a woman patient suffering from pains which suggested appendicitis. There were also some indications that the disorder might be psychological. While trying to find out the cause through psychoanalysis, the doctor remembered a similar case of a colleague whose patient had died of a ruptured appendix. He therefore rushed his own patient to the hospital and had her operated on, and as it turned out, just in time. Now the doctor himself became disturbed. The incident took place during the Christmas season and was still fresh in his mind when he was invited to a family party to which he had no inclination to go. He developed a severe abdominal pain. A doctor friend examined him and recommended an immediate operation. But now the psychiatrist hesitated. As a mental healer, he began to trace the cause of his pain and soon came to the conclusion that the worry over the narrow escape of his patient had given him the idea of appendicitis. Moreover, he had had a recent talk with his mother, who had described how his father had died of appendicitis. All this strengthened the perception that his pain was psychological, that perhaps the unwillingness to join the party had brought about an unconscious desire to spend the Christmas day in the hospital. As soon as the man discovered its cause, the pain left him. He went to the party and enjoyed it. This is from Flanders Dunbar, Mind and Body, Psychosomatic Medicine, published in 1947, page 41. When such a thing can happen to a trained psychoanalyst, there is no wonder that many of us select comfortable illnesses to suffer from and sometimes even enjoy them. I know people who create worries if they have none and even magnify them, who periodically get emotionally involved in the affairs of others and create troubles for themselves and for those associated with them. They seem to thrive on tension. If we keep a steady watch over the wanderings of our mind, we can in many cases detect their emotional troubles, put an end to our self-created illnesses, and enjoy health and peace. Meaning of the word, next section, meaning of the word personality. What is personality? The unconscious part of us and the conscious part of us together make up what is called personality, which reaches out into its environment and in turn is affected by it. When psychologists declare that a man's personality is a collection of capacities, habits, and attitudes which distinguish him from other men, the question naturally arises, who is it that thinks, feels, wills, and acts? What is the constant factor that persists and enables man to consider himself the same person in the midst of changes in body, mind, and ego and environment? Philosophy and religion cannot stop with the psychological view, they want to go deeper. In man, in ourselves, we find that the ego, the mind, the senses, and the body all combine to form a complex. Now, what is the most important factor in man? It is his consciousness. First, I am, and then I think. I feel, I will, I perceive, I act. We experience our consciousness directly and that of others indirectly. Whether it is our individual, whatever it is, our individual consciousness seems to be made of the same stuff, although the stuff naturally gets associated or identified with other things which vary from person to person. Besides the continuous struggle with the outer world, there is also a never-ending conflict in the inner world. So life becomes an incessant adjustment within ourselves and also with the outer world. Lack of poise is due to failure in this adjustment. The eminent psychiatrist Menninger, in one of his books, observes, our failures are expressed in one of the two types of reactions, flight or attack. Both these reactions indicate instability. Sometimes we want to run away from everything that troubles. Self-induced sickness and drunkenness are such expressions of flight. If they are not cured, personality degenerates. The attack reaction, if properly directed, may bring readjustment, resulting in more or less complete poise. Through the right kind of fighting spirit, learning to fight the enemies within, we may attain a measure of poise and peace. This is Williams C. Menninger and Monroe Leaf, You and Psychiatry, published in 1948. From the spiritual point of view, however, psychological stability is not enough. Egocentric poise at the psychological level may break down if put to a severe test. Most psychologists would have us believe that a complete resolution of the basic conflicts within us can never be hoped for. This is felt to be true also of the moral and spiritual conflicts we pass through in life. In the case of extraordinary souls who have attained spiritual illumination, however, the victory and poise attained are more complete than anything psychology can ever conceive of. So we will stop here. We are on page 238. Next section is the individual and the universe. We can take any questions and discussion before we close. Okay, if there is nothing, then we'll chant the closing prayer. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Hari Om.
Hari Om.